Welcome back. Today, let's do a traditional wheated bourbon. And we're going to do an all-grain mash, but this is a very simple mashing process because we're going to be using high-temperature liquid enzymes from Broken Bones Distillery. And, if you're an experienced distiller and you want to try this, you're going to love it because it saves so many steps from the traditional mashing process. And if you're a beginner, you're going to love this because this is the perfect recipe to get you started in the all grain category. If you've been doing sugar mashes and sugar washes, you want to try some all grain, this is a great starting recipe for that because of its simplicity, because of the high temperature liquid amylase that we're going to be using. So let's jump into it. This mash bill is very simple. It is 70% corn, it is 17% malted white wheat, and 13% malted two-row barley. And for this recipe, we're going to be doing a 6-gallon recipe. We're going to be using 2 pounds of grain per gallon of water. And then I also am going to be using the Still in the Clear kit for this recipe, this traditional all-grain wheated bourbon recipe. This kit is going to include everything you need, all the ingredients you need to make this wheated bourbon with the exception of water. So you got to provide your own water. So we've got the 1.5 pounds of coarsely ground malted barley. We've got 2 pounds of coarsely malted white wheat. And we have 8.5 pounds of coarsely ground corn. Also included is the liquid enzymes. This is enough to do this entire recipe. You've got the high temperature alpha and you've got the glucoamylase. Also included are 2 medium charred oak sticks so that you can oak your whiskey when it's finished, and the yeast that you'll need. Also included are a full set of instructions and several of the Still in the Clear guide sheets, how to calculate PPG, which we're going to go over in just a second, a liquid enzymes guide for how to use the liquid enzymes, a typical PPG chart for future use, and also the oak stick aging guide. That all comes in the kit. Now let's go over some of the math. We're going to calculate the expected PPG of this recipe, which will also let us calculate the expected ABV percentage of this recipe. All right, so it's some quick math, and I'll put the guide sheet up here, which goes over the PPG for this particular recipe as I kind of walk you through it. So first we've got to figure out how many gravity points are in this recipe for each grain. So we've got 2 pounds of the malted white wheat. Gravity for the PPG for malted white wheat is 31. That's in that typical PPG chart that comes with this kit. And so 2 times 31 is 62. Then we have 1.5 pounds of the malted barley, which also has a PPG of 31. So you multiply 1.5 times 31, that's 46.5. And then the corn, we have 8.5 pounds of corn. Corn has a PPG of around 30. And so you multiply 8.5 times 30, that comes out to 255. We add all of those together and we get 163.5. Now that's the total points in this, the total number of gravity points in this recipe. Now we have to do it's a points per pounds per gallon. Now we got to do the per gallon part. So we're going to divide the 363.5 by 6 because that's how many gallons of water that we're going to be using. And so that comes out to 60.5, and we're going to round that up to 61. And so that's how many gravity points this recipe has, 61. And so we know that our initial gravity reading is going to come out somewhere right around 1.061. that makes it easy. Now, knowing that our initial gravity is 1.061, we can calculate what our ABV is going to be, and that recipe is pretty, or that formula is pretty simple. You take the initial gravity minus the final gravity, and we're going to assume at this point that our final gravity will be 1.000. And so 1.061 minus 1.000 comes out to 0.061. You multiply that sum by 131.25. Now, if you're new to all these calculations, I know it sounds like I'm rambling off a bunch of complicated numbers, but the more you practice these formulas, the more you realize they're really simple. And that, anyway, you multiply that out and it comes out to 8. So we should anticipate an alcohol by volume of 8%. Now, I'm not going to bother with calculating yield at this point, so we're going to get right into mashing this in. So I'm going to set everything up. I'll be right back. While my water's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and set up my mixer. And this is just a simple little mixer that I made. In fact, if you're interested in me doing a video on how to make one of these, just let me know down in the comments. Put down in the comments that you'd like to see a video on how to build the mixer, and I'll make one. Pretty simple. And then I have it's basically a dimmer switch so that I can control the speed of the drill. So we're just over 190, which is just fine. In fact, you can take it all the way up to boiling if you want, but at this point, we're going to dump in our corn as we're stirring. If you don't have an automatic mixer like this of some sort, then this part, you know, it's nice to have two people because you want to stir continuously as you're pouring in the grain. You want to pour it in slow and stir the whole time because you don't want any of the clumps. You don't want it like a dough ball to be formed. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that done. This is the 8.5 pounds of corn. I'll start the mixer. And I'm just going to slowly let it stir in. You don't want to dump all this in at one time. Now this has been stirring now for just under 90 minutes, and you can see that I've got a really good gelatinization. It's really thick and sticky. Barely even slides off the knife here. So my gelatinization of the corn is complete. I'm going to drop in the barley and the wheat, let it stir a little more, maybe 10 minutes, and then I'm going to add the amylase. Well, for some reason it wasn't, the recording stopped and while I was dumping in all the grain, but I've dumped in the 2 pounds of malted barley and the 2 pounds of wheat and the 1.5 pounds of malted barley. And you can see that almost immediately it is much thinner, and that is because the alpha amylase is breaking up the starch molecules into long chain sugars, and so it thins it out and makes it not so sticky. We're going to add in our other 2 gallons of cold water. That'll help bring the temperature down. We want to get the temperature down to 90 degrees. Then we're going to add in our glucoamylase, and that's going to convert the long chain sugars down into fermentable sugars or glucose. All right, we're down to 90 degrees, and I'm just going to add in the glucoamylase. Remember, this is Broken Bones Distillery amylase that comes with the, oh shoot, my little ring fell down in there, dadgummit. This is the Broken Bones Distillery amylase, and so it goes in at 90 degrees, and you want to keep in mind that depending on the brand of amylase, liquid amylase that you choose, the temperature ranges and the dosages will be different. So now I'm just going to stir that up, and I don't have to use my big mixer for that. I just got to stir it up a little bit. I think I'm just going to grab the paddle and kind of stir this around, mix this up a little bit, and this is going to rest for 3 hours, and then I'm going to pitch yeast. And I didn't realize that I didn't have any of my on-the-grain fermenters open or available. So, this is just a barrel with no valve, no bazooka filter or anything, just a barrel. And then when this is done fermenting, I'll just have to siphon off the top and strain the grain. So our mash is in here, and we want to test the specific gravity just before we pitch yeast. We're ready to pitch yeast, but I want to know, how well of a conversion we got. So if everything went well, then we should have got 1.061. If everything went exceptionally, then we'll be a little higher than that, because if you'll notice on the PPG chart for the grains, there's an actual column and then there is a percentage column, and it's like 85%. So kind of give you some wiggle room. You can do better than that 85%, but those are the numbers I use when I'm doing all my calculations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this funnel. It has a sieve in it. It's a removable sieve. Nice little funnel, stainless steel, and I'm just going to get some of the mash in here, and it's messy because there's a lot of grain in there, and I got to swirl my finger around that sieve to allow it to go in, because the grain that's in there, it quickly wants to clog up that sieve. So I'm just running my finger around it and getting enough liquid in there to take a sample. You can just take a sample, lots of times I've used a turkey baster and that works fine. But this is a little bit better way that I found that doesn't get so many pieces of, the grains inside, which can affect your reading slightly. Also, you'll be able to taste that it's very sweet if your conversion went well. If your conversion didn't go well, it's not going to taste sweet. Just as if, you had used sugar and added sugar in there. All right, let's see, where are we? So I'm at 1.068. So did a little better than expected. That's fine. So 1.068 is going to work out great. Now I can take that starting gravity and I can start doing predictions about what my ABV is going to be, what my yield is going to be, and all of that. So, and now I'm going to pitch the yeast, and the Still in the Clear All-Grain Wheated Bourbon kit comes with the yeast. This is just a daddy yeast, which is my preference when I'm doing a whiskey. And I'm just going to, pour that in and stir it up. Now we just let it sit. Should finish off, if everything goes well, in 7 to 10 days. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. And I'm going to go ahead and make another batch because I actually want a 12-gallon run. And so I'm going to make another batch. But I wanted to do this as a 6-gallon batch because, you know, that's what the kit is. It's a 6-gallon kit. If you're interested in checking that kit out, I'll put a link down in the show notes where you can get that all-grain wheated bourbon ingredients kit. Comes with everything you need except the water. And if you want to get the free guide sheets that I'm always talking about, I'll put a link up here. And also, if you like this, if you are a bourbon fan, I've got a couple other videos, and I'll put one up here, and then I'll put one up here that, you know, YouTube thinks you'll like. So check either one of them out.